Okay, first up on the show, the latest report that is out from BCG X, talking a little bit about how companies can really cut costs, increase productivity through AI, and what the internal and external challenges are by companies in their AI adoption journey. To understand this more and decode the report findings, we've got Sylvian Duranton, the MD and Senior Partner Global Leader at BCG X. Thanks so much for taking time out. Good to have you on board. Tell us a little bit more about how BCG is actually helping companies to cut costs and to, increase their productivity through AI, because hate it or like it, you just can't ignore it.
So yes, you're right. AI has been the magic word of the last years, especially since the emergence of GenAI, and sometimes it's, I think, too much used as a word for two reasons. GenAI is not the solve of every problem of a company, and very often the solutions which are being built are not just about GenAI, but it's also combining with more traditional AI like machine learning, but many other technologies like blockchain and others to get to the exact best solution for customers. And what we do within BCG and BCGX is to work closely with some of our clients to jointly build custom software solution powered by AI very often to solve some of the biggest business issues that companies have. And the big call for action is not to try to solve everything in a company with AI, because in the end, nothing gets solved, but really to focus on 1, 2, or 3 topics where we can really build with our clients a super high impact solution to solve what they consider is their main challenge or the main topic that they want to address. And that's what we do for a living. We are combining the consulting and advisory expertise and teams from BCG with the tech team of BCGX, which are engineers, data scientists, designers, who are really building technology with our clients.
And what are some of the key insights on GenAI adoption across businesses?
So last year was a year of discovery for GenAI. Companies started to get interested. They were a bit hesitant until mid-year last year. They were more seeing like, my God, we might lose our data if our employees start to use GenAI too much. So they were super limitative. By the end of the year, they became much more open. They have started to purchase some license for their employees to be able to use GenAI more broadly. So it was a year of discovery. And by the way, on that discovery year, India has scored super high, because among all countries in the world, if you ask the general population, have you heard about GenAI? It's in India that you get the highest response. Yes, I did, number 1 in the world. And if you ask to people who have heard about GenAI whether they tried it, there again, India is number 1 in the world. So I think that discovery phase for GenAI has been extremely successful and powerful in India, showing the appetite from Indian customers, Indian citizens, Indian employees to use technology. 2024, the challenge will be to scale GenAI solutions or AI and GenAI solutions within companies. And it's a hard journey. And we do regular surveys of companies, leadership teams at companies to understand their plan for AI. And what they told us about 2024, they told us we will be investing much more than we did in 2023 on AI and GenAI, which I think is a good news. But many are saying, we will be experimenting, piloting for sure. We are not sure yet we'll be scaling that technology. And my belief is that 2024 will be the year of scaling, and companies who will start scaling AI and GenAI in 2024 will be leading the pack in the technology field across sectors. And those who just want to test and experiment without scaling, they will lose time and money because they won't get to any impact. And one of the reasons companies are hesitant on whether they should start scaling right now or not is because the technology landscape is still moving. We see new models coming, new providers, new solutions. Some people say, in the end, everything will be open source. Others will say, no, there will still be commercial models. So the technological landscape is not completely stable yet, but I don't think it's a good reason to wait because it will take a lot of time to stabilize, and companies should start to act now to learn how to build, customize, deploy those models in their organization to manage the impact on the workforce in their organization, because the change which is coming with GenAI is very profound, very fundamental. Some functions will be completely rebuilt, and if you think, depending on industries, but we see that insurance and banking are ahead of the pack today globally across the world in terms of deployment of GenAI and AI, and in functions like underwriting, customer service, for instance, these functions will be completely changed with what GenAI is bringing to the table, and companies cannot lose time to learn how to deploy those technologies. And yes, technology might change. Maybe companies will be moving from one model provider to the other, and that's okay in the end, because that's not what's the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is to start scaling this solution into the organization of companies.
You know, as per the report, tell us a little bit more about the key internal and external challenges that are faced by companies in their adoption journey for AI. You know, it could be regulatory in nature, data management, etc. Walk us through them.
So one top challenge that all companies are expressing is recruiting. It's a new field. You don't have that many experts. So there's a massive recruiting and upskilling challenge of their teams. And on this one, we work very closely with our client and client partners to make sure that everything our teams are learning across the world and across sectors is shared with our client. It's very new knowledge, which is improving month after month, quarter after quarter, that we share with our clients. So that's one very big challenge. Then another challenge is cost. When you scale those GenAI solutions, you all of a sudden realize that it can be quite expensive. In the past, traditional AI was mostly open source and sort of very close to zero incremental cost to use for companies. So what they had to finance were the people that were building technologies for them. Now with GenAI, there is a cost attached to the use of the technology because of the license, but also because of the cost of energy, which is pretty significant, and the access to CPU and computing power. So that's one challenge that companies are facing. And depending on how you build your GenAI models, you might have, you call the GenAI model and you get your answers and your request, and it might cost you maybe $1, $2, $3, or maybe 1, 2, 3 cents of a dollar. And here, there is lots of optimization that you can do to make sure that you manage the cost of your AI solution. And that's one of the challenges, because if you want to have good response time, if you want to have good answers, and if you want to have manageable cost, that requires a lot of expertise to do that. So that's one big, I would say, hurdle to scale. And many companies have invested lots of money in many small POCs, proof of concepts everywhere. Doing a POC is super easy. Building something that can scale is super difficult. So that's the first hurdle. The second hurdle is in the organization, because GenAI can automate a lot of tasks. So it's changing the nature of what people are supposed to do in companies. And you know it, I'm sure. Changing the way people work takes time, is quite expensive. You cannot change your mind every 2 weeks and ask people to change again. So changing the organization, changing the processes, changing the way people work is the second challenge to be able to scale. But it is worth it. And one big thing for decision makers to realize is that the benefits of GenAI tend to be much higher than what they expect. But the journey to get there is much more difficult than they expect also. So it's a journey which is worth undertaking, but with the right resourcing, the right mindset, the right ambition, and the right external partners.
So would you say that there are many risks associated with deploying GenAI at speed?
To me, the main risk with GenAI is not testing the solutions enough. We are talking here about engines which are able to produce content. Can be text, so you have companies using AI to produce RFPs or to produce a pitch and an answer to an RFP. Or we have companies who can use GenAI to talk in writing or in speech to some of their customers. You can use GenAI to do quality monitoring in your factories or to produce massive compliance documents. We've seen some pharma companies, for instance, using GenAI to prepare the documentation to get drug approval to get on the market. So these are very critical functions of companies where people and companies start to deploy GenAI. And to do this, there needs to be massive testing. In the past, when people were doing machine learning, testing was just about statistics. You would take a sample of data, you would check the reliability of the model, you would have a statistic measure for that, and you could decide that you wanted to go with it or not. Here with GenAI, you don't have statistics to say whether your document is relevant, accurate, or not. So you have to test and test and test again. And one risk I see is many companies work directly with some tech providers, small vendors, boutiques, whatever. It's quite easy to build a first proof of concept where you can see a chatbot talking or whatever. It's very different to make sure that the chatbot or the engine will never go into nonsense. To do that, you need to test using technology. So we have built, for instance, algorithms whose job is to bombard a GenAI engine with requests and questions and to check whether the answers are correct or whether the answers are maybe incorrect, nonsensical, or toxic. And in parallel, you also need to use human teams of humans to red team those solutions, to ask them all the super weird, tortuous, ambiguous questions to see whether a GenAI engine can cope with those situations or whether you need to further calibrate the model. And one of the big things that I'm seeing is lack of systematic, strong, and robust training of GenAI engines. And to support that and to help as BCG X, we have decided to open source some technology, which every company in the world can use to start testing the GenAI solution that they are building for themselves.
How can businesses, according to you, really leverage the synergies of predictive AI and Gen AI to enable transformative change? What are some of the key factors they need to keep in mind?
Gen AI is not the replacement of machine learning or deep learning. It's a complement. So we will still need machine learning engineers, deep learning engineers, and in addition, we'll need Gen AI engineers because most solutions will combine both. Sometimes we say it's a bit like left and right brain. We have one part of the brain which is very good at playing with numbers, computing, and getting to an exact answer. So for instance, if you want to do some market forecast, in the end, you need to send a number to the factory to know how many pieces and how many units needs to be manufactured and what size of inventory, we need for a given item. So for that, you need traditional AI, machine learning, deep learning. But at the same time, GenAI will provide creativity, ideas, content, write documents, using some of those very important quantitative insights from traditional AI, but embedding them in a broader context. If you want to understand how much units you have to produce based on very hardcore numbers, you might also be interested of using GenAI to better sense the market, to deal with many more data that you could find in the past, looking at videos that are having success somewhere, looking at market surveys, market trends in a very systematic way, and then combine those new data with whatever traditional AI can bring in terms of precision when it comes to decision making. And GenAI is also a way to convey those results in a very, I would say, effective way. Like many companies have used machine learning to do some recommendation engine and to understand what should be the next offer that our salesperson should be proposing to a customer, given what the customer already has, for instance. And in the end, someone was writing a mail with an offer which was pretty standard when we were using standard AI. Now with GenAI, we can encapsulate that recommendation into a very personalized text, mail, or different formats. So it's also a way to embed the insights of AI into an outcome which is much more rich than the number itself. And that's why most of the powerful use cases we see, or the most powerful transformation using AI that we see today, is a combination of traditional AI, but also GenAI.
And then there's always that quandary with respect to AI overtaking jobs and humans. Is that a worry?
We have the same question from our consulting teams who keep on saying, but do you still see a job for consultant, or in the end will GenAI do everything? And we are super convinced that there's still a very big role for humans across businesses, which will be enhanced by GenAI, not replaced. And in many situations, GenAI will maybe take over the 4 most tedious, ugly, boring hours all of us, white collars, blue collars, have in our weeks. And I think it's good news for everyone.